I'm going to go over the ID list for the heart in this video. I encourage you to watch the videos in your lab folder as well as go through the worksheet before you start trying to learn these structures. It's going to be beneficial for you to have your orientation, you know where you are in the heart, and to know what these structures do. So let's get started. This is a view of the heart, and here it is highlighted. The heart is going to have 4 chambers. The 2 upper chambers are your receiving chambers, and they are called atria. This is the right atrium. This is an internal view. We'll look at an external view later. Each atrium has an appendage called an auricle that comes off of it. It looks like a little pig's ear, and it actually increases the volume of the atrium. So we're going to go back to an external view, and this is going to be the right auricle. This will be the left atrium with its left auricle. The right atrium is receiving blood coming back from the tissues. This is deoxygenated blood. The left atrium is receiving blood returning from the lungs after gas exchange. So this is oxygenated blood. Let's look at the lower chambers. These are the ventricles. This will be the right ventricle, and the right ventricle ejects blood. My ventricles are my ejecting chambers. It is ejecting blood into a blood vessel called the pulmonary trunk artery that carries blood to the lungs. The left ventricle is ejecting blood into the aorta. This is your main artery. It transports oxygen-rich blood to your tissues. From an exterior view, you can see an indented place or a groove, and this is called the interventricular sulcus. Now remember, with all of these, you want to go over here and read the description and any comments, because I could draw some text-based questions from that information. So now we're going to go back here. In addition, we have a coronary sulcus, which is going to be a groove between the atria, and this would be the right atrium up in here, and the ventricles. So this is going to be the right ventricle here. You also have what's called the apex of the heart. This is the pointed part of the heart. I want you to think of an acorn. Notice that the heart is angled. The apex is going to be pointing toward the left hip. This broad place area here of the heart is called the base, and it will be oriented toward the right shoulder. Going back to the inside, we're going to be looking at the heart valves. There are 4 heart valves, 2 atrioventricular valves, and they separate the atria from the ventricles. So they're going to be between those 2 chambers. We're going to have one on the right side, the right atrioventricular valve. It is also known as the tricuspid valve because it consists of 3 cusps. So this regulates the movement of blood from the right atrium into the right ventricle. Associated with the AV valves are cords made of collagen, and they are called chordae tendineae. And that's going to anchor the AV valve to some muscles called papillary muscles. And it's because they are they look like a papilla or like little tiny mountains. So we'll come back to that. Let's look over here. We've got the left atrioventricular valve there. It has 2 cusps, so it's also known as the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. Again, you're going to have the chordae tendineae, which are going to be these collagen fibers here. The chordae tendineae are also known as your heartstrings, and the papillary muscles. So the chordae tendineae are attached to papillary muscles. You're going to have the papillary muscles in both chambers, ventricles. You've got some right here. What they do is, again, this is what the chordae tendineae are anchored to. And the chordae tendineae do not open up the valves, the AV valves. What they do is they prevent those valves from opening in the wrong direction, what we call eversion. The other two valves are semilunar valves. We're going to begin with the one on the left side between the left ventricle and the aorta that drains it. This is looking down the aorta, so they've cut the aorta, and here are the valves. This semilunar valves consist of three cusps that appear or look kind of like half moons, and they are structured like a little cup. So what happens when the blood leaves the ventricle, goes into the artery, some of that blood is going to wash backwards and fill those cups and keep the semilunar valves closed. So this is the aortic semilunar valve. On the right side, we have the pulmonary semilunar valve. So this right in here, this is looking into the right ventricle. Here are the chordae tendineae. There's a papillary muscle. This here is the right atrioventricular valve, or the tricuspid valve. So this is still part of the right ventricle. This is the pulmonary trunk artery, which is the artery that receives blood from the right ventricle. And here you can see two of the cusps, and you can see how they're kind of structured like cups. And the blood would fill these little cups to keep these valves closed. Continuing anteriorly, we're going to be looking at the wall that separates the two atria. This is called the interatrial septum. Septum means wall, so this is going to be the right atrium. This is the left atrium. You also have an interventricular septum between the two ventricles. Going back to the right atrium, you have an oval-shaped depressed area, and that is where there used to be an opening. So it's a remnant of an opening called the foramen ovale that was present during fetal development. This allows blood to go directly from the right atrium into the left atrium. So it's a hole that used to connect those two atria in order to bypass the lungs. Remember, the fetus is not breathing, it's receiving its blood from, its oxygen from mom. And so this allows you to bypass the lungs. The wall of the heart is going to have three layers. Starting from the outermost layer, covering the surface of the heart, you're going to have the epicardium. Epi means on the surface. The thickest layer of the heart is going to be the myocardium, which is all of this muscle-looking stuff. So let me get rid of the highlight. So this is the interventricular septum, and it consists of this myocardium here. So you can see it looks like muscle. And then lining the chambers, you have the third innermost layer of the heart wall. This is the endocardium, which is continuous with the endothelium of the blood vessels. So now this is the myocardium of the right ventricle, and this is the myocardium of the left. What I want you to notice is the thickness of the outer wall here. Notice that the myocardium of the left ventricle is thicker than the right. And this is because you're going to have to create more pressure in the left ventricle. We'll talk about this in lecture, but in order to do that, you need more muscle. Going back to the right atrium, you're going to have an opening for a vein called the coronary sinus. This vein returns blood back from the heart muscle to the right atrium. In the atria, you also have what we call pectinate muscles. We can see these in the auricles of the atria. These are ridges in the myocardium. The Ventricles also have ridges in the myocardium. They're more pronounced and they're called trabeculae carneae, and you can see those there. So don't get those mixed up with the papillary muscles. Notice that the papillary muscles have the chordae tendineae attached to them. That takes care of this list, so we're going to go to the next one. Here we're looking again at an anterior surface of the heart, but we can see the blood vessels. This is the anterior interventricular artery. It is the main artery feeding your ventricles, particularly your left ventricle. So if I go here, I'm going to click on the information. It says that it goes along that interventricular sulcus, which is that indented area between the two ventricles. So this would be the right ventricle. This is the left one. The sulcus is right here. And it goes to the right ventricle, the left ventricle, and the interventricular septum. So that's what it's going to supply. This is what's called the widowmaker. If you have an occlusion or a clot here, it's going to prevent blood flow to your ventricles. And remember, these are your ejecting chambers, so this can be fatal if it's not addressed. This is the ascending aorta. It's the first part of the aorta. Remember that it's receiving blood from the left ventricle. Looking externally, let's find the chambers. This is going to be my left atrium. I'm looking at it from an anterior view. When you look at it from the posterior view, you're going to notice it's fairly large. This is my left ventricle. This is my right atrium and my right ventricle. Let's go back to the blood vessels. I'm going to go through the arteries first. Coming off of the coronary artery on the left side, you're going to have two branches, so it's going to feed into two branches. One of those branches will be that anterior interventricular artery that I talked about. The other branch is going to be the circumflex, which you can't see here, but then you're going to have a left marginal artery coming off. And that left marginal artery is going to be around the left lateral surface of the heart. We also have a right marginal artery, which is right here, feeding the right lateral side of the heart. And that's coming off of the right coronary artery. So when you look at an illustration, you'll notice that the first two branches coming off of the ascending aorta are going to be your coronary arteries. You're going to have a right one that's going to go around the heart to the backside, to the posterior surface, and you're going to have a left one, but the left one is very short before it branches into that anterior interventricular artery and the circumflex arteries. So you're not going to see much of it, if any of it at all. What happens is when it comes off of the ascending aorta, it goes deep to or underneath the pulmonary trunk artery, which this is the pulmonary trunk artery. It is an artery. It is blue because the blood here is deoxygenated. That blood is being ejected by the right ventricle. Remember, this is blood that has returned from the tissues and is deoxygenated. The pulmonary trunk then will feed into pulmonary arteries, going to your lungs, where gas exchange will occur. So the color represents the degree of oxygenation. Blue will be poorly oxygenated or deoxygenated blood. Red will be richly oxygenated blood. What determines whether it's an artery or a vein is the direction in which it is transporting blood. So arteries always transport blood away from the heart, veins toward the heart. Now let's look at our veins. The great cardiac vein runs parallel to the anterior interventricular artery. So there you can see that. It is the main vein draining your ventricles. The inferior vena cava is the main vein or the vein that is returning blood back from the lower part of your body. So the superior vena cava is returning blood back from the upper appendages, your arms, and the head region. The veins are going to, for the most part, run parallel to the arteries that have the same name. So this is the left marginal vein. And these veins on the surface of the heart are part of the coronary circuit. They are feeding or supplying the heart muscle and draining blood from the heart muscle, returning it back to the heart. So here is the left marginal vein next to the left marginal artery. These are your right pulmonary veins. Again, they're red because they are returning blood back from the lungs where gas exchange has occurred. You're going to have two from the right lungs and two from the left. On the right lateral surface, you're going to have a small cardiac vein. And this is looking at the superior vena cava. The last activity is going to be looking at the heart from a posterior surface. So here's the coronary sulcus. Remember, that's between the atria and the ventricles. Here is your left atrium from a posterior view, left auricle. Here is the left ventricle, right ventricle, and the right atrium. The posterior interventricular sulcus is located here. Running along that sulcus will be the posterior interventricular artery, which is not on your list. So that concludes this video. Don't forget to check and click on the information so that you can read what these vessels supply or drain and get a little additional information about them.